Spokesperson Preet Gill.
Thank you, Ms Badel, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And can I thank my right honourable friend, the member for Islington North, for securing this debate, and the honourable members for Rotherham, Tewkesbury, Putney and Glasgow North, who've contributed for an excellent and timely debate on recent events in both Ethiopia and Sudan, and the year anniversary in particular of hostilities in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Ms Badel, these are issues that have sadly received far too little attention globally, and I want to thank my honourable friend, the member for Cardiff South and Penrith, who could not be here today, and many other honourable members for all that they have done to raise awareness of these issues and challenging the UK government on their response over many months. I cannot underemphasise the moment of peril we face in the region for the ordinary civilians who, as ever, bear the brunt of this instability and conflict, and indeed of the wider risk to peace, prosperity and stability in a crucial region of Africa. We have a long and complex history and responsibility with both Sudan and Ethiopia, and a strong interest from the British people in both countries. The human-made famine in Ethiopia in the 1980s is seared in the hearts of the British people, as stated by my right honourable friend for Islington North, and Sudanese and Ethiopian communities across the UK are right to be deeply frightened and concerned by recent events and what they may mean for their loved ones, as stated by my honourable friend, the member for Rotherham, and who is chair of the IDC committee. We in the Labour Party stand in solidarity with them for peace, democracy, human rights and the humanitarian principle, and in urging the UK government to do all it can to ensure that this is upheld rather than cutting our aid, our influence and our international leadership at such a crucial time. Let me begin with the situation in Ethiopia, in Tigray and beyond. I'm deeply concerned, Ms Badel, by events in recent days that appear to suggest a further descent into conflict and instability that can only harm the people of Ethiopia, regardless of their politics, ethnicity or regional origins. Reports of a widening of the conflict, a state of emergency and the risk of conflict reaching the capital Addis Ababa, the home of the African Union itself, should be a wake-up call to the world. I want to state, as I'm sure the Minister will do, of our desire to see first a return to peaceful dialogue, second, full humanitarian access, and an end to attacks and restrictions on humanitarian personnel and operations, and thirdly, urgent, full and independent investigations into atrocities that have been committed by whoever may be responsible, and the full force of international justice brought to bear on the perpetrators, whoever they may be, including the use of targeted UK sanctions under the Magnitsky regime. This is nothing short of a tragedy, and we need an immediate ceasefire. Ethiopia had been a global success story, moving towards a democratic society, lifting millions out of poverty and acting as a bastion of stability. Ethiopia had been one of the largest recipients of UK aid, which has steadily grown, as has our partnership in trade and other areas. It is approaching a year now since the clashes broke out in Tigray between the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the federal government. Ethiopia now risks falling into a lethal civil war, undoing decades of peace and prosperity, especially for those in the regions of Tigray, Afar and Amhara. Tens of thousands of refugees have already spilled over the borders into Sudan, whose own government has now been hijacked by a military coup, or they have been coerced back into Eritrea, the very country so many were running from, given the past history of conflict between the two countries. I'm also deeply alarmed with reports of disappearances and targeted attacks on Tigrayans outside of Tigray. And this comes on top of existing economic and health crisis and a growing food crisis, with tens of thousands facing the risk of famine. Thousands of Tigray's children face life-endangering acute malnutrition, a condition that will likely affect their development if they survive, and 100,000 could die from this condition in the next year alone. UN OCHA recently stated that in a week in early October, only 52,000 people were reached with food, or 1% of the 5.2 million targeted population in Tigray, in which half of them received only 1 or 2 food items. 400,000 people in northern Ethiopia are now facing famine-like conditions, as mentioned by my honourable friend, the member for Putney. And in addition, thousands face the prospect of no banking services, no cash, and complete disruption to commercial activities. Little fuel has gone into Tigray since August, and organisations cannot work without fuel, as they cannot travel out to more remote areas, and medicines also haven't been going into the region either. I welcome, therefore, that the government announced an increase in aid to Ethiopia by another 29 million, but UN OCHA has reported they still face a funding gap of some 270 million. Staggeringly, UK aid to Ethiopia has in fact decreased by 64.3% between 2018 and 21 estimates, as stated in the FCDO budget reports. I would ask the Minister what financial assistance has the UK provided to Ethiopia since the offset of this crisis? Has this support been part of the regular ODA budget? And will the government further increase its support considering the worsening situation? As my honourable colleague from Cardiff South and Penrith has repeatedly asked ministers, has total support for Ethiopia gone up or down? We have also heard shocking reports of 10,000 rapes, an estimate that doesn't take into account the last several months, in a region where only around 9% of health facilities are functional, and of these, only a third have the capacity for clinical management of rape. Amnesty International's recent report on sexual violence in the region of Tigray is damning. The report highlights the sadistic brutality that is being inflicted on women by parties to the conflict, including members of the Ethiopian National Defence Force, the Eritrean Defence Force, the Amara Regional Police Special Force, and Fano, an Amara militia group. In the report, Agnes Kalamard, Amnesty International Secretary General, says, "It's clear that rape and sexual violence have been used as a weapon of war to inflict lasting physical and psychological damage on women and girls in Tigray. Hundreds have been subjected to brutal treatment aimed at degrading and dehumanizing them." Yet this is only the start of the crisis facing Tigray and other affected regions. Ethiopia is also facing the fifth largest COVID-19 outbreak in the whole of Africa. OCHA reports that only 3% of Tigrayans have been reached with essential sanitation and hygiene messages. And since members last met here to discuss this disaster, little has changed in terms of human suffering other than the extent of it has gotten worse. The UN recently stated that from 18th to 28th of October, no trucks with humanitarian supplies were able to reach Tigray, and from the 1st of July to 28th of October, only 15% of the trucks needed were able to enter the region. Senior UN staff have been denied access, including the country heads of UNICEF, the head of OCHA, and the UN recently announced that it has cancelled flights to the capital, Mekelle, and suspended aid delivery activities as a result of government-led airstrikes in the area. And we saw USAID Chief Samantha Power say that this shortage is not because food is unavailable, but because the Ethiopian government is obstructing humanitarian aid and personnel, including land convoys and air access. So I asked the Minister what assessment she has made of humanitarian access for civilians caught up in this conflict, and what consideration is being made of the growing evidence of serious human rights abuses and crimes against humanity. How is evidence such as that brought into public attention by the BBC World Service and other human rights organisations being used to ensure those responsible do not escape justice? She will know that the UN's Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has now released a joint report with the Ethiopian National Human Rights Commission, which investigates abuses between November 2020 and late June 2021. Given the continued gravity of this situation, we call on the UK to urgently support the establishment of an independent investigation by the Human Rights Council. As we all know, and as my friend, the Honourable Member for Islington raised, the Sudanese transitional government has been hijacked by a military coup, and I welcome the common view across the House and the international community condemning these events. On Labour's side, I repeat our complete condemnation of this coup, joining the government, the UN and other international partners. This is nothing short of betrayal of the hopes of the Sudanese people after decades of repression and denial of human rights. This also comes at a critical time for the people of Sudan. OCHA reports that heavy rainfall has led to hundreds of thousands of people affected, and that relief stocks, especially of washed products, are depleting. The country currently has 9.8 million severely food insecure people and 1.1 million refugees. In addition, we know of at least 60,000 refugees from Ethiopia who have fled a war zone to these famine-like conditions. Is the Minister able to comment on the condition of these refugees and what humanitarian support and assistance is being provided? Last Monday, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan took power from the Sudanese transitional government and declared a state of emergency. Thousands have taken to the streets to protest this attack on democracy, and reports suggest that several people have been killed and hundreds have been injured in clashes with armed forces in the capital. Live ammunition has reportedly been used on civilian protesters. And since the urgent question last week, can the Minister confirm whether contact has been made with the General and what action is being taken? And while UK ODA depends upon the recipient country upholding its people's rights, and this military government has not, millions are in need. It is shocking that the UK government has already effectively cut Sudan's aid by $580 million in 2022 based on estimates. So will the Minister now reconsider those cuts for vital humanitarian assistance to both Sudan and Ethiopia? And what assessment has the Minister made of the risk to international judicial processes against former President Bashir for crimes committed in Darfur and elsewhere, as well as those responsible for more recent massacres? Ms. Bardell, while the government pivots to the Indo-Pacific, cuts our development budget, weakens our alliances and influence, the situation in the East and Horn of Africa goes from bad to worse, with consequences reaching far beyond the regional environment. If we are to avoid catastrophe for the ordinary women, men and children of Ethiopia and Sudan, and avoid a descent into even worse consequences across the region, the government must end its retreat from the world stage, step up and show some desperately needed moral and political leadership. Thank you.
I now call Minister Vicky Ford.
Thank you, Ms. Madam. It's a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I congratulate